She looked you dead in the eyes and told you everything was fine, and you believed her. You sat across from her at that table, in that car, in that moment, and you read nothing. You felt something was off, something underneath the words that didn't quite match, but you pushed it down. You told yourself you were overthinking it. You weren't overthinking it. The body never lies. The mouth is a politician. It smiles, it deflects, it performs, but the body is a confession. Every shift of the weight, every micro expression, every unconscious gesture, it's all language. Ancient, primal, undeniable language. And most men have never been taught to read a single word of it. That ends today. I'm going to walk you through 8 of the most powerful, most revealing, most psychologically significant body language signals that women display. Signals that most men walk right past without ever understanding what they just missed. And I need you to stay with me until the very end, because the last one is the one that will genuinely change how you see every interaction you've ever had. Here's the brutal truth about why most men miss these signals. It's not because they're unintelligent. It's not because they don't care. It's because they were never trained to look below the surface. From the time most men are young, the emotional world, the world of subtext, of nuance, of what isn't being said, that world is treated like it doesn't matter. You were taught to listen to words. You were rewarded for taking things at face value. But human beings are not face value creatures. We are layered, we are contradictory, and women in particular have developed an extraordinarily sophisticated system of non-verbal communication, not out of manipulation, but out of social survival. For centuries, indirect communication was the only safe form of expression available to them. That instinct is still running. It's still alive in every room you walk into. The man who understands this is not manipulative. He is not a predator hunting for weaknesses. He is awake. He sees clearly. And because he sees clearly, he cannot be deceived. He cannot be blindsided. And he cannot be made to feel crazy for trusting what his gut already knew. This is about self-respect. This is about clarity. This is about building the kind of emotional intelligence that makes you unshakable. Because the man who reads the room accurately, he never has to chase, he never has to beg, he never has to replay a conversation at 2 a.m. wondering what went wrong. He already knows, and knowing is power. Before we go any further, if this kind of deep, honest, psychologically grounded content is what you've been looking for, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button, not for the algorithm, not for the numbers, but because this channel is going to keep giving you the kind of clarity that most people spend years in therapy trying to find. Like this video if it's already landing, and drop a comment. Tell me where in the world you're watching from. It genuinely matters to me to know who's in this room. Now let's get into it. Number 1, the direction of her feet. Most people focus entirely on the face during a conversation. Number 2, the eyes, the smile, the expression. And while those things matter, they are also the most controlled, most performative parts of the body. The face has been trained since childhood to behave in social situations, but the feet, nobody coaches the feet. Here is something that most people will go their entire lives without learning. The feet point toward where the mind wants to go. Think about that for a moment. When someone is genuinely engaged with you, genuinely interested, genuinely present, their body opens toward you. Their torso, their shoulders, their feet, all orient in your direction like a compass finding magnetic north. It's unconscious, it's automatic, it's ancient. The body leans into what it wants and turns away from what it doesn't. Now, picture the opposite. You're in a conversation, she's talking to you, smiling even, saying all the right things, but her feet are already pointing toward the exit, toward the other side of the room, toward anywhere but where you're standing. That is her nervous system talking. That is the honest part of her, the part that operates below her social training, telling you the truth that her words are politely hiding. This is not about paranoia. This is not about turning every interaction into an interrogation. It's about learning to hold both pieces of information at once, what someone says and what someone's body says. And when those two things don't match, trusting the one that can't be faked. The next time you're in a conversation that matters, stop watching her mouth for a moment. Look down. The feet always know. And if the feet are a whisper, what we're about to talk about next is a shout. Pay attention. Number 2, the freeze response. You've probably heard of fight or flight. You've probably never heard about the third option, the one that doesn't get talked about nearly enough because it's the subtlest and the most important. Freeze. When a person encounters something emotionally threatening, a question they weren't expecting, a topic that triggers discomfort, a situation that puts them under pressure, the nervous system does not always run or attack. Sometimes it goes completely still. This looks like nothing. That's why it's missed. It looks like a pause, a blink, a slight stiffening of the shoulders, a moment where the animation drains from someone's face, just for a fraction of a second before it comes back. That fraction of a second is a window into something real. Watch for the moment when the conversation shifts and her energy goes still. Not calm still. There's a difference. Calm is relaxed and open. Still is held, controlled, like someone who just heard a sound in the dark and stopped breathing so they can listen. What triggers the freeze tells you everything about where the real tension lives. It might be the mention of a name. It might be a specific question. It might be a subject she normally talks about with ease, but suddenly approaches with invisible caution. That caution has a reason. The freeze is the body protecting something it doesn't want examined. Now here's the critical mindset shift. Your job in that moment is not to press harder. It's not to call her out. It's simply to notice, to file it away, because the man who notices without reacting immediately is the man who eventually understands the full picture, while everyone else is still arguing about the surface. The freeze is a tell, and what we're moving into next is something even more powerful, because it's the one signal she shows you when she's genuinely interested and doesn't want you to know it yet. Number 3, the unconscious mirroring. Here's a fact from behavioral psychology that will reframe every social interaction you've ever had. When human beings are drawn to someone, when genuine connection or attraction is present, they begin to unconsciously mirror that person's movements. Not on purpose, not consciously. The brain does it automatically because mirroring is one of the oldest social bonding mechanisms in our species. It's how infants connect with their caregivers. It's how tribes built trust. It runs so deep in our wiring that most people engage in it their entire lives without ever once noticing they're doing it. She picks up her drink after you pick up yours. She leans forward when you lean forward. She shifts her posture to match your posture. She uses a word you just used. These are not coincidences. These are invitations. But here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. Mirroring is involuntary. That's what makes it so honest. She cannot decide to mirror you without already feeling something that makes her want to. It's the emotional state that produces the behavior, not the other way around. When she's genuinely engaged with you, genuinely connected, genuinely drawn in, the mirroring happens whether she intends it or not. This means you can test the emotional temperature of any conversation with a simple, subtle movement. Cross your arms slowly, lean back in your chair, see what happens. You're not manipulating anything. You're reading the room, you're checking the signal. And when the mirror is present, when she's moving with you like a reflection, you already know what her heart is saying, long before she decides if she's ready to say it with words. Now I want you to hold on to that image, the mirror, because the next sign we're going to talk about is what happens when the mirror suddenly disappears. And that story is one of the most important things I'm going to tell you today. Number 4, the sudden withdrawal of warmth. You know this feeling, you've lived it. Maybe you're living it right now. Everything was easy. Everything flowed. The conversation was effortless. The energy was warm. She was present and engaged. And something between you felt alive. And then, without any event you could point to, without any argument or incident or obvious shift, it stopped. The warmth withdrew like a tide going out. And suddenly you were standing on cold, empty sand, wondering what you did wrong. Here is the psychological reality of what that sudden withdrawal often means, and I want you to understand this clearly. A woman who withdraws warmth without explanation is communicating through behavior what she hasn't decided to say through words. Something changed internally for her, something she observed, something she felt, something she processed, and rather than confronting it directly, she pulled back. The withdrawal is a signal. Sometimes it's a signal of hurt. Sometimes it's a signal of disappointment. Sometimes it's a signal of reassessment. She's watching to see how you respond to the distance. Will you chase? Will you panic? Will you fold? Because here's what she's measuring in that moment, whether she's conscious of it or not: your emotional stability, your sense of self. whether you can hold your own energy without collapsing into anxiety the moment hers recedes. The worst thing you can do when warmth withdraws is to frantically try to recover it. To over-explain, over-text, over-perform. That behavior confirms every concern that triggered the withdrawal in the first place. The most powerful thing you can do is remain grounded. Stay in your own energy. Don't chase the warmth. Be the warmth. Because a man who doesn't lose himself the moment someone pulls away is a man who has something that cannot be taught quickly or faked convincingly. He has security, and that is magnetic. The next sign we're covering escalates everything we've talked about so far. Because we've been looking at individual signals, now we're going to look at what happens when you start to see those signals repeating, when they form a pattern. Number 5, repeated self-touching as an anxiety marker. The body has a self-soothing system. When we are anxious, uncertain, or emotionally activated, we touch ourselves, not in any dramatic way, but in the quiet, habitual ways we developed as children to calm our own nervous systems. Touching the neck, running fingers through the hair, rubbing the collarbone, touching the wrist, adjusting clothing that doesn't need adjusting. These are called self-pacifying behaviors, and they are one of the most reliable indicators of an activated emotional state. Now here's where this gets layered and important. This behavior is neutral until you understand the context. Someone can self-touch because they are attracted and nervous. Someone can self-touch because they are uncomfortable and want to leave. Someone can self-touch because the conversation has gone somewhere that triggered something deep and complicated for them. Your job is not to assume what the context is. Your job is to notice the behavior and then pay attention to what just happened immediately before it began. The touch follows the trigger. Always. So when you notice she suddenly starts touching her neck during a specific topic or begins adjusting her hair right after a specific moment, back up. What just happened? What was said? What shifted? Because something in that moment landed in her nervous system in a way that required self-regulation. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes she's touching her hair because you just said something that made her feel seen and she doesn't know what to do with that warmth. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes the touch appears right after she told you something that wasn't fully true, and her body is flooding with the discomfort of that. Read the context. Watch for the trigger. The pattern becomes a map. And the pattern we're about to discuss next is the one that once you see it, you will never unsee. It's the signal that operates in real time, right in front of your eyes, and most men look directly at it without recognizing what it means. Number 6, eye contact and the language of avoidance. Eye contact is the most intimate form of nonverbal communication available to human beings without physical touch. There is a reason that sustained eye contact between strangers can feel almost unbearably vulnerable. It is direct access to the internal world. The eyes communicate what the social mask is designed to hide, and the way a woman manages eye contact with you will tell you more about where you stand with her than any conversation you could ever have. There are 2 failure modes here, and both are significant. The first is the absence of eye contact. When someone consistently looks away during moments that carry emotional weight, when they find reasons to look at their phone, or the room, or their hands during the precise moments when a real connection would require them to look at you, that avoidance is meaningful. It can mean discomfort. It can mean guilt. It can mean that meeting your eyes in that moment would require them to be more honest than they're prepared to be. But here is the second failure mode that almost nobody talks about: excessive, unnatural, performed eye contact. There is a quality to genuine eye contact that is almost impossible to fake. It has softness and presence in it. It feels like arrival. And then there is manufactured eye contact, the kind that is deliberately held too long, too steadily, too consistently, that has a calculating quality underneath it. It feels like a tool rather than a gift. Real eye contact breaks naturally, it drifts and returns, it moves with the rhythm of the conversation. Genuine warmth in the eyes is not static, it breathes. When the eyes are warm and present and naturally responsive, you are in contact with something real. When the eyes are performing interest, performing connection, performing engagement, something underneath has already decided it doesn't want to be fully here. Trust what you feel when you look into someone's eyes. Your nervous system reads these signals faster than your conscious mind does. That feeling of something being slightly off, that sensation that the connection isn't quite landing right. Your body already knows what your mind is still trying to explain. And what we're about to enter now is where everything gets heavier, because we've been building toward this. Number 7, proxemics, the invisible architecture of space. Every human being carries an invisible geography around their body. Personal space and the rules of that geography, who is allowed in, who is kept out, how close is close, are some of the most psychologically revealing rules in all of human behavior. Edward Hall, the cultural anthropologist who pioneered this field, called it proxemics, the study of how people use and regulate space as a form of communication. And what he found was that the distance a person maintains from you at any given moment is a direct expression of how emotionally safe they feel with you. Think about the circles. The outermost circle is public space, strangers, acquaintances, formal situations. The next circle is social space, colleagues, friendly but not intimate relationships. Then comes personal space, then intimate space, and each of those circles has rules, and those rules are enforced unconsciously, instinctively, by every person in every interaction. When a woman reduces the distance between you without a practical reason to do so, when she steps closer than the situation requires, when she finds reasons to be in your personal space, that is not accidental. The body does not enter intimate space without emotional permission. She may not even be conscious of doing it, but something in her decided it was safe to come closer. Now watch the opposite. Watch for the micro retreats, the subtle backward step when you say something specific, the way she creates distance by turning her body, increasing the physical space between you, moving objects into that space, her bag, her drink, anything that functions as a subtle physical barrier. These micro retreats are responses. Something just happened that made her need more distance than she had a moment ago. Space doesn't lie. Space never performs. Space is simply the body's honest answer to the question, how close do I actually want to be to this person right now? We are getting close to the final sign. The one I told you at the beginning would be the most important. The one I said would change things. I need you to take a breath, because this last one isn't about a single gesture or a specific moment. This one is about the entirety of a pattern, and once you understand it, you're going to think about every relationship you've ever had through a completely different lens. Number 8, the incongruent signal, the final sign. Everything we've talked about today has been building toward this incongruence. The moment when what a person shows you does not match what a person tells you, not in a single gesture, not in one expression, but as a consistent repeating pattern across time. The smile that appears on command but never quite reaches the eyes, the enthusiasm in the words that is somehow absent in the energy, the warmth in the voice that contradicts the closed-off position of the body. Incongruence is the body trying to tell the truth while the mind is trying to maintain a story. And here is the profound, uncomfortable, important reality about incongruence. We all feel it. We feel it immediately. That subtle sense that something doesn't add up. That experience of leaving a conversation and feeling vaguely unsettled even though you can't point to a single thing that was said. That quiet alarm in your gut that keeps going off even as you try to silence it. You were right. Your instincts were right. You were reading Incongruence and nobody taught you to name it, so you called it overthinking and you dismissed it. Stop dismissing it. The psychological principle at work here is called emotional leakage, the idea supported by decades of behavioral research that authentic emotional states cannot be perfectly suppressed. They leak through micro-expressions that last a quarter of a second before the social mask reinstates itself, through posture that closes while the face performs openness, through the rhythm of speech that quickens or flattens in ways that don't match the content of the words. Here is what makes incongruence the most important signal of all. It's not about any single interaction. It's about the pattern. 1 inconsistency is noise. 2 is interesting. 3 or more repeated across different contexts and different conversations. That is a pattern. And patterns are the truth that individual moments can obscure. The woman who consistently shows you warmth in words but coldness in presence. The partner who says she supports you, but whose body language disappears when you talk about your ambitions. The person whose eyes smile when she's performing happiness and go flat when she thinks you're not watching. Incongruence is the gap between the person someone presents and the person they actually are in this moment. And a man who can read that gap calmly, clearly, without drama, that man cannot be made a fool of. Not because he's cynical, not because he trusts no one, but because he trusts accurately. He trusts what the whole picture shows, not just the parts that are meant to be seen. That is the final sign. That is the signal that contains all the others. And that is the man you are becoming by choosing to pay attention. Let me zoom out for a moment. None of what we've talked about today is a manual for suspicion. It is not a guide to seeing everyone as a threat or turning every relationship into an intelligence operation. That is not the goal. That is not the wisdom. The wisdom is this: accuracy, the ability to see clearly, to hold what people show you alongside what they say, to trust your perceptions instead of constantly second-guessing them because someone told you that you were too sensitive or too analytical. Not every closed posture means deception. Not every avoidance of eye contact means guilt. Human beings are complex and context matters enormously. Sometimes people are just tired. Sometimes they're anxious about something entirely unrelated to you. Sometimes the signals that look alarming are simply the artifacts of a hard day. The goal is not to convict. The goal is to observe. Over time, across contexts, to let the pattern speak rather than the single moment. And when the pattern speaks, when the accumulated evidence of repeated incongruence and consistent withdrawal and habitual self-concealment all point in the same direction, the man with emotional intelligence does not ignore it. He does not rationalize it. He does not minimize it to protect his comfort. He acts on what he sees, calmly, decisively, with dignity, because that is what self-respect looks like in practice. Not rage, not desperation, just clear eyes and the willingness to make decisions based on reality rather than on the version of reality you wish were true. I want to leave you with something to carry out of this video. Think about the most significant relationship in your life right now, romantic, platonic, or professional, and ask yourself, honestly, has there been a pattern of incongruence? Have there been repeated moments where the signals didn't add up, where your instincts flagged something that your logic tried to dismiss? Not to catastrophize it, not to blow it up immediately, but to sit with the question, to give yourself the permission to see clearly. Because here's the thing about clarity, it doesn't always take you to a darker place. Sometimes it takes you somewhere lighter. Sometimes the honest look reveals that what you've been anxious about is your own projection, your own old wound, responding to a situation that doesn't deserve the suspicion. Clarity can free you in both directions. What it cannot do is leave you in the fog. And the fog is the most dangerous place of all, because in the fog, you don't see what's coming, and you don't see what's actually there. Choose clarity. Every time, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That is the choice of a man who respects himself. If this video gave you something, a new frame, a language for something you felt but couldn't name, a moment of recognition, then it did its job. And I'd love you to hit subscribe right now, because what we do on this channel is exactly this. We bring you the psychological depth, the honest analysis, the self-respecting perspective that the mainstream refuses to offer. Like this video, share it with a man you know who needs to hear this. And down in the comments, I want to know which of these 8 signals hit closest to home for you. Which one made you think of a specific moment, a specific person, a specific interaction where you now realize you are reading something real and dismissed it? Tell me, because your experience matters, and you might just say something in the comments that helps someone else feel less alone in what they've been carrying. I'm Dr. Julie, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay awake, stay clear, stay yourself,